modern times, the apprentice is now a customer. How do you feel that that's changed the way the artist passed from person to person?
This is the parent that walks up to me and complains about my program. Even though he's never trained before, but he complains about my program because he's a customer. So he looks at me like he's a customer at McDonald's buying a hamburger and going, this is how I want my burger. I'm not McDonald's, bro. I'm not Burger King. This is how I cook my food. You can take it or leave it. And there's a conflict there because as a customer, there's a tendency for customers to shape the culture. So I joke about it in this chapter in my book. What if all the white belts of the world got together and went, we want our blue belts or we're going to quit? Gym owners would feel under pressure to what? To promote people faster, which is kind of what's happening. We're already watching classes that are 45 minutes long. You know, we're watching classes get easier. Blue belts are getting easier. Black belts are getting easier. Why? That's commercial pressure because you make more money that way. You get a bunch of gym owners and coaches together. It's like at least half the conversation is like them giving each other tips on how to make more money in their gyms. And I'm like, I'm not against that, guys, but is that all you guys have to say? Really? There's nothing else to talk about here. It's become very, very commercial. And I think there's something detrimental to that when it's become like the goal. I don't want to be Taekwondo. No disrespect to Taekwondo. I don't want to be one of those gyms that are just, you know, like no one knows how to fight. No one doesn't have that Spartan culture anymore. Like I miss that. I like that. That's what drew me to jiu-jitsu.
Welcome back to the BJJ Fanatics podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Ford. My guest today is a 5th degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's also a black belt world champion and a black belt World Cup champion. He was also an ADCC open weight champion. He's also a retired professional MMA fighter and a veteran of the UFC. He was also the legacy MMA light heavyweight champion, and he was undefeated in his MMA career. He's one of the most accomplished members of Team Braza and now leads his own team, Team Zenith, based out of Las Vegas, Nevada. Some of the biggest names in MMA seek his knowledge to improve their jiu-jitsu. He was also the coach on the Ultimate Fighter Show, coaching Team Mir, Team Joanna, and Team Tate, as well as Team Benavidez. He's also a very successful author with several books published on the history and culture of jiu-jitsu. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to be joined today for the 5th time on the podcast by Professor Robert Drysdale. How are you today, Robert?
I'm doing great, Ryan. Thanks for having me back.
Of course, it's great to have you back. There's not many guests that have made it 5 times back on the show, so it's always a pleasure to get to chop it up with you, and I appreciate you coming back so many times.
It's an honor, man. I enjoy talking to you. You're a friend above all, so thank you for having me.
That means a lot, brother. Thank you so much. So, Rob, last time you were on the show was actually almost a year ago to the date. So catch us up. What have you been up to in the last year?
Working. I teach class every day. I travel for seminars on weekends, and on my free time, I like to read and write. I'm currently, this last year I was working on the book, What is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Today? Early this year, I want to say around March, I had the idea of writing. Really, it's always an article that grows into a book. It's always that way. Like, I'm going to write something because on August this year, we celebrate 50 years of the rule set that gave BJJ its current technical shape, which is the ground orientation for which BJJ is known for. 4 points for back, 4 points for mount. It's extremely relevant because the evolution, the innovation that we're so proud of begins there, right? Prior to that, we were essentially, trained pre-war judo and calling it jiu-jitsu, which is an eclectic term anyway. Pre-war judo and jiu-jitsu are pretty much the same thing during that period. And I wanted to write something up. It's a bit of a rush between March and June, July. I was able to, put something together, and I wanted to release it in August because that was when we were celebrating 50 years of the what I call a technical revolution. And I was able to do it. I found a typo in one of them the other day, so I'm not too happy. So I have to go back and fix it at some point. But I think they're good books. That's what's keeping me busy. Like, that's what I've been working on pretty much exclusive my free time. Other than training, coaching, I still coach full time. I travel with my students for seminars. If you're an active competitor, you'll probably see me at the main events. I never stop my obligations as a coach and as a team leader. I still do all that. I just like to read and write on my free time because I enjoy it. Above all, it's something I do with joy.
One of the main reasons I always love having you on the show is that I really do feel like you are at the forefront of historians in jiu-jitsu. I really can't think of anyone else that's put in as much time and effort in the research and the writing that you do. And the things you bring to the table in these conversations as a result of that is always really refreshing and fascinating. In fact, our last interview, you referenced that rule change. I believe it was 1975, where the Gracies changed the rules that really took things from the standing, more judo looking style of fighting to the groundwork that we all know today. That's for the listeners. If you guys haven't heard that last episode, go back and listen to it because it's very interesting. And he went really deep into it. Now, your new books, you've got two of them. You've got The Triumph of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and you've got What is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Today? Now, Robert, not to sound lazy, but I'm going to use the title of your book for my first question here. What is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu today? How is it different than the old Jiu-Jitsu?
So just before I get into that, Ryan, just one quick correction.
Sure.
I appreciate the kind words. I am not the most qualified person to speak of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu history. The most qualified person is called Roberto Pedreira, and I could have not had written any of my books without his help. And I mean this not only because of the works that he has published, but because of personal help and essentially pulling me out of state of illiteracy, which I found myself in before I started writing these books. I didn't know it. And I'm very appreciative because no one does anything alone in this life. So I'd like to be thankful for the people who helped me. So the credit is mostly his for the research. I have my own opinions. I have my own view of things. I do add something to this. It would be unfair with myself to say that I added nothing, but to say that I did the heavy lifting in terms of research, or to say that I am the most qualified person to speak of BJJ history, that would be inaccurate. Although I thank you for your kind words.
Well, I also want to say something else that you do bring to the table. And that's really cool that you gave your friend, that you gave him a shout out and gave him props for that. But something that you also do in your writing that I always appreciate is you strip a lot of the mysticism that has always come along with jiu-jitsu. You tend to kind of strip a lot of that away. And I think it's given a refreshing look at jiu-jitsu and at the history of jiu-jitsu that for a lot of us is completely different than the narrative that we've been told since the beginning. So again, you got to give yourself enough credit for sure. So, because you do a lot with your writing and your research, and then also your honest presentation of everything.
I thank you, man. You know what is, I actually got that from politics. I didn't get that reading from jiu-jitsu history. It was something I learned in politics, and it was always, it was when I first moved to the United States in 99. I just finished high school in Brazil. So the plan was for me to attend college in the United States. And that's when I started really getting into jiu-jitsu. Was around that time. I had started in Brazil, but I was really into jiu-jitsu by 1999. And I noticed when I moved to the United States that there was a right-wing press. And that was always strange to me. And then there was a left-wing press. And that always struck me as odd. I still think it's odd. I can't wrap my head around that. So you're telling me that you're sacrificing objectivity before you even know what the facts are. You already have a theory that precedes the facts, the known facts. That's always strange to me. I think an honest journalist, like an honest historian, ought to look at the facts and then, pass judgment based on the facts, not based on, my team has to win no matter what. And it's the same principle that is applied in, that's my reading of history. I'm not saying I'm the most qualified historian, but Lady Justice is blindfolded for a reason. She's weighing the scale because those are the facts. He passes judgment. It's based on the facts. It doesn't matter. You wouldn't judge someone based on their skin color. You wouldn't judge them on their nationality. You wouldn't judge them on their gender, on their sexuality, on their religion. Why would I judge someone on their surname? Why would I judge someone positively or negatively based on what country they happen to be born into? Oh, you were born north of the equator, so I think this of you. You were born south of the equator, I'm going to think this. It's so ignorant to me. It's just so obvious that any decent reading, any honest reading of history would ignore all these things and just look at the facts as they are. Now, I'm not suggesting I'm the most I'm perfect in that regard. If I don't have my failings, that I'm not incompetent in many ways. Like I got a lot to learn, but I did try to be unbiased there. I was trying to, tell history as it is and to the best of my ability without picking sides. And I think to a degree I was able to do that because I don't have a problem giving people credit for what they did, but it bothers me deeply when people give themselves credit for what they didn't do. Like, hold up here, man, you did amazing things here, but don't give yourself credit for it. Let's give credit to the people who actually did the heavy lifting, which is why I'm always picking fights with people, because I see people give themselves credit for what they did and do. I'm like, hold up here, man. Like when you see the Instagram purple belt that goes, look at all the moves that I know, look how special and cool I am. I'm like, yeah, you're standing on the shoulders of giants. The giants aren't short, man, just because you're above them. You're above them thanks to them. Like they did the heavy lifting. So always remember where you came from. And that was always my goal, was to give these people their due credit, because it is an incredible story. And I think some people get more credit than they deserve. And some of the heavy lifters, the people that did, the hard work that paved the way of the road on which we walk on today, the road that we are so proud of, they did not get their credit. Like some of these guys in their 90s in Brazil, and they haven't given an interview in a decade. Like they're just forgotten. They're just like, these are the guys that did it, not me, not you, purple belt from Instagram. Like, I'm happy you like jiu-jitsu, and I appreciate you loving it. Just don't remember where you came from. This was handed to you. So be appreciative of the people who did the work that precedes you. And that was a big part of my motivation, I guess,
Yeah. Well, no, like I said, I mean, because of your research and your work, and I think that, obviously the reason, the fact that you've sought these people out and made sure that they don't get erased from history is a reason why I even know who they are. It's very easy to lose people along the way in the history books. So I think it's great that you've taken the time to seek these people out and also show their stories so they're not forgotten.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. I mean, and it's still going on, like I was thinking, you start reading about these things and all these little gaps that we have to fill in with a few facts that we have. And, you want to avoid speculation at all costs when you're writing, but reading is a difficult thing when you don't have a lot of facts. You don't have a lot of information. And I was thinking the whole time it would be a waste if these guys passed and we didn't hear what they had to say. Now, of course, you got to be careful with oral tradition, as any historian knows. It's very complex because people lie, they forget, their allegiances change. So I'm friends with Ryan today. He's a great guy. Tomorrow I'm his enemy. He's a bad guy. And that's how we see people's testimony, accounts of the same event change over time, so it's not something you can fully trust either. But I wanted to hear it from their mouth. Like, where does this come from? How did you guys train, and how do we get where we are? And we learn a lot about where we are and where we're going. If you study the past enough, like the future becomes, they say that every historian is a wannabe prophet. You want to be able to tell the future. It's not how it works, but you start seeing patterns, and it's almost inevitable that you start seeing patterns, because the one thing you do learn is that, oh, this happened before. And if it happened before, it will happen again. That's the one thing that's consistent about history. Not exactly the same, but many of the same, because people don't change, right? Human motivations and passions and values are the same since we've been humans. So it tends to be cyclical for that reason. And what historians try to do is like, oh, this happened before, people pay attention because this is where we're going. But most people don't care, I guess. They're just having fun with jiu-jitsu. But I love what I do. And if I can play a role in helping people understand what it is that we do and why we do it, I feel honored to do so.
That's great. Well, now to speaking of the present and the future, to once again recycle the title of your book and present it as a question, what is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu today, and how do you think it's different than the old Jiu-Jitsu?
And that's the question. It's hard to define, because that's the whole thesis of the book, is that it's changing. It meant something in the 1800s. It meant something else, early in the Kodokan's history. It meant something else when it made it to Brazil. When it meant something else as judo's becoming an Olympic sport, it means something else after 1975. Before 1975, very different kinds of jiu-jitsu. It's a major split there. And now it's changing again. I divide the history of jiu-jitsu into 4 waves, and I think we're living a 5th wave now. We're already in a new stage where the values, the culture, the techniques, the rule sets, the environment has changed so much. It's the business, professionalization, entertainment era, which I'm somewhat critical of. I know, like, I come across as such a hater when I say this. It's like, why can't you just be happy like everyone else? It's like, it's not that I'm happy for the athletes. I'd be following their shoes. Probably wouldn't be doing the shit talking, because I don't know how to do it anyway, but I'd be happy to make 50 grand a fight. I'm not talking about that's good for them, but it comes with a lot of things that I don't think people realize what they do with the general culture. There is a conflict between education and entertainment, because once you get into your head that the purpose is to sell tickets at any cost, you can very easily forget about more important things. All right, the first thing you start doing is you want to cut the line. Why would you pay the price? Why would you do it the hard way? Just go straight pro, so you don't have to enter the competition leagues, because that's way too hard. It's way harder to win these IBJJF tournaments than it is to just go professional right away. Make a name for yourself, market yourself, act obnoxiously, do what you got to do to get into the big shows. You're going to get more money and more followers. Now, you didn't walk the right path. It's what I call a helicopter ride to the top of Mount Everest. Now, you can do that. And then most people, they climb Mount Everest. If they want to claim they climb it, they don't take a helicopter ride. They use their own legs. And then you get people, taking a helicopter ride to the top, and it's the same view, and they're going, it's the same thing. I'm just smarter than you. Work smart, not hard, kind of thing. And I'm opposed to that view. I said, no, you work hard, not smart. You work hard, because that's where strength comes from. And that's what we're after, isn't it? That's what we're after here as martial artists. You're looking for strength. You're not looking for the easy way. You're looking for the hard way. It's just like, okay, why not just buy a black belt then? We just saw that happen recently. Why not just buy a black belt? Why not buy a stripe? Why not buy a coral belt? I mean, it's just smart, not hard. And I'm opposed to all this. That's, one beef I have with professionalization, it is that it's not meritocratic. It is based on marketing. You get the professional events, they hire based on hype. How famous are you? Do you have followers? Can you sell tickets? That's what they're looking at. I'm opposed to that. It should be entirely meritocratic. Oh, but the guy sells less. I don't care. Oh, well, you can't make money that way. It's less important. It's less important that you keep merit as the fundamental metric to be pursued. To me, is a given. It's all merit. I don't care marketing. I don't care how many followers. It doesn't matter to me. It means nothing. Oh, but he was born in Brazil. He was born in Australia. I don't care. But he's dyed his hair some funny color. Like, I don't care. It doesn't mean anything to me. So this whole entertainment, it detracts from merit, which is something I prize so much, because in merit are all the right values. You have to have accountability. You have to have discipline. You have to have courage. You have to walk the hard road. You have to do things the hard way. And that's where strength lies. That's where improvement and growth lies. Not where the money is, but self-improvement. So it comes down to what is it that you're after. Are you looking for self-improvement, or are you looking to enrich yourself or die trying? Because if you're looking to get rich and die trying, I can't be your coach. I can't train you. I don't know how to do that. I mean, you can go train with Dylan Dennis. He'll train you and teach you how to do that. He's great at it. I don't dislike. He's a good kid. I don't mean him personally. But I don't like the way he does things. I'm in disagreement with. I oppose, like, on one end Dylan Dennis, on the other one Roger Gracie. Who do you want to be? Do you want to be Roger? Or you want to be Dylan? They're very different roads, different values, different actions, different thoughts, different everything. Which one do you want to be? And if you want to be this guy, you have to follow this road. If you want to be that guy, you follow the other road. Professionalization is making explicitly clear which way people should go, because it is faster. You want to go to Roger Gracie? Well, good luck. Go win all those world titles you won. Good luck. See how far you make it. It's much harder. So it really is a form of a shortcut in the name of ticket sales and entertainment. And I know I sound like a hater when I say this, Ryan. I'm sorry. It's not my intention. I know it's coming from a good place, but we have plenty of entertainment in 2025. We're not suffering from a lack of entertainment in 2025. There's an excess of entertainment. We're lacking education. And I'm just talking just people just, read jiu-jitsu history. Don't take my word for it. Don't go, I heard Robert Drysdale on a podcast. No, you don't. You can't learn anything about jiu-jitsu history or anything for that matter, watching a YouTube video, even if it's an hour long. Certainly not 30 seconds long. You're going to have to do some diving. You're going to have to put some time into it. I think these things are more important than entertainment. I think we got an excess of entertainment in 2025. And there's a lack of critical thinking and just, people sitting down and trying to understand what it is that they're so opinionated about, instead of going, I saw this guy on TikTok. I know what's happening, and I feel, and this is beyond jiu-jitsu, of course, but I think it's an important thing that, I don't know, it's how I feel about it. All right. I hope people get my point. I don't want to come across as a hater. I know that's what it sounds like, but it's infinitely more important.
Robert, this makes me think of something that you said in your book. There was a question you asked that said, are the gains superior to what's being lost? I think that the gains in jiu-jitsu's popularity over the last, 20 years or so, are obvious. Obviously it's, more students, more money, more opportunities, et cetera. What do you feel, as a martial art, what do you feel has been simultaneously lost from jiu-jitsu?
I'll give you an example. Like my students, I have a child, like at the gym, like I'm on a kid on a kids program. If they lose, and this has happened before, the parents walk up to me and they go like this: how are you going to explain perfect little Johnny losing, because little Johnny cannot do wrong. Little Johnny is this perfect little thing that cannot lose. He's perfect. Clearly, if he lost, it is your fault. And unless you fix this, Mr. Robert, I'm going to take him somewhere else. And that's the helicopter parent for you. Like, this was unthinkable 30 years ago. And it's not just coming from children and their parents. It's coming from adults, too. It's coming from adults. They lose, they blame the Brazilian referee. That's my personal favorite. Like no American competed in Brazil more than me. No one. I competed more than any other American in Brazil, by far. Okay? I never felt like I got screwed. They didn't even, like, oh, you can always say, oh, Robert speaks Portuguese, he's half Brazilian. They didn't know that. My name is Robert Drysdale. You think they knew me as a purple belt? They thought I was a gringo. I never felt like I got screwed, so I don't buy it. I'm sorry, I don't buy it. And then they lose. It's always the rule set. It's this, it's that. It's always a reason why. And it's the teammates. And I've been blamed more times than I can count for students who lose. I'm like, well, it's funny because I was able to win, and why these other guys are winning? Why can't you win? It's never them. The accountability is one. Courage. People picking training partners. You know, like my ex Michelle. I'm very proud of her. I know she's been on your podcast before. Michelle, she's a tiny woman. Okay, I have never ever heard her complain about who she was training with. She was trained with grown men my size. It didn't cross my mind that she had the option of complaining. It didn't cross her mind that she had the option of complaining. She just trained. She shut up and she trained. And that's why she was the greatest. She was one of the greatest of all times, because she had the right mindset. Like, you just threw yourself out there. You know, it's the discipline. You know, it's just like, show up, stop complicating things, guys. Oh, the system. What's the new system? What's the new instructional? What's the new method? Oh, ecological jiu-jitsu versus this. And spend more time talking about it than you're training. It's so simple, guys. Shut up and train. It's very simple. And I'm sorry to say it so bluntly. And it's not something you can sell, because you can't monetize what I'm saying. That's why it's not popular. And even like professional athletes that are listening to me now, they will agree with me. There's a lot of shut up and keep your head down. There's not a lot of talking about systems and methodologies and blah, 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 blah. That's your excuse not to just put your head down and get it done. You just want an easy way out. You don't want to do it the hard way, right? But the reason why a lot of people don't speak out on this, because they're trying to monetize it. They're going, wow, you can't monetize that. I don't care. Like, it's not, I make plenty for myself, Ryan. Like, I'm not rich, but I don't share this obsession with, like, I got to get rich or die trying. I have everything I need. I have everything I need in my life, man. I'm happy writing history books. I'm happy to teach class. I get requested to teach seminars still. It's been, 16 years since I've competed, and I still get requested. And I believe because I teach a good seminar. So people bring me back. I'm a good coach. I know what I'm talking about. I speak from authority. You know, I've done it. I've competed at the highest level, gi, no gi in MMA, and I've coached at the highest level, gi, no gi in MMA. I don't have to market myself. My skills speak for themselves. I don't have to promote myself. I don't have to do any of these things. You know? So I'm very fortunate to be able to do what I do, and I make plenty for myself. I don't share this obsession. It's another thing. Like, all of a sudden, money is the metric of success in jiu-jitsu. When did that happen? You know, and when I people disagree with me, I always, because everyone's got a picture of Jigoro Kano on their wall, and I love that. I think that's cool. You think you should have Jigoro Kano on your wall, because this is the father of martial arts. Have you read him? And very few people have read him. Granted, I don't read Japanese. I'm talking about translations. But they're available online. You can read what is translated into English, which is, you know, you get an idea of what the man is saying. See what he thinks about professionalization and what the purpose of judo is. He's talking about education and improving the individual and improving on society as a whole when individual improves, right? So, yeah, should praise Jigoro Kano, but you got to start by reading him, not just putting a picture on the wall that's too convenient. You know, so that's where I stand with jiu-jitsu today. And my book, going back to your original question, what is Brazilian jiu-jitsu today, is a critique of all this. And I think that some very important things have been lost. And I don't think I can change anything. And I think I've given up on that fight a long time ago. I just do my best to, you know, register it. And, you know, maybe someone 100 years from now, when they ask the question, what the hell happened? They'll read one of my books and go, oh, that's what happened. And I think, you know, forgive my lack of modesty, but I think my books accomplish that.
I would definitely agree. Yeah. Robert, I think what you said there about putting in work is something that everyone has to hear from time to time. It's very important. And in modern times now, we have so many avenues to learn efficiently. Like, we can learn online, we can attend seminars with ease. Private classes are usually very available from really recognized people. But at the end of the day, you got to take that information and put it into practice. And you have to you have to build discipline, and you have to build systems to track your own training and analyze what's going on, and then put in the work to make those adjustments. I think that in modern times, people do want to find that shortcut. They do want to find the magic pill, and there just isn't.
And listen,
one. Yeah.
I'm not saying that methodology can improve. I'm not saying you shouldn't learn from others. I'm not saying you shouldn't buy instructionals or watch YouTube videos. You can learn from all these things. They are important. What I'm saying, that's not the solution to your problems. You know that friend of yours, everyone's got a friend who thought that if he took creatine, he'd get strong. He doesn't actually lift weights, but he just takes a lot of creatine. And they go, I should be good to go. I don't actually want to lift and squat. That's too hard. I'm just going to take creatine.
Yeah.
That's what these people sound like to me, right? They're just a guy taking creatine at home and thinking, but if you lift every day and you do it properly and you take creatine, creatine is proven to help. It's going to improve your performance, right? So creatine is great as long as you are doing the heavy lifting, but you can't take the creatine without the heavy lifting. And I think that's where people think it's a 50-50 kind, because that's what they want to believe. And truly, creatine is less than 1% of the equation.
You just get more gas and urinate more if you don't.
Pretty much. And it's or the guy that buys the treadmill and leaves it in his garage and goes, oh, if I have a treadmill in my garage, I'll automatically lose weight. No, you actually have to get on the treadmill, bro.
Yeah, it just becomes a clothing hanger. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think everyone agrees. It's funny how these things are like, we agree, but we don't always put it into practice. It's like that motivational quote you see on Instagram. They're like, oh, I agree with that. That's how I should be. I'm going to do this from now on. But you can't actually implement it into your life, because putting it into practice is so much harder than actually just agreeing with it. It's like when I teach my students a move, they always agree with me. Yeah, coach, but that doesn't mean they're doing it. Doing it takes effort. To implement something into your life, whether it's your, in your personal life or on your jiu-jitsu game, you actually need, effort. You have to be trying, you have to be correcting yourself, be aware of the times you're making that mistake. And I think these are the things I learned in jiu-jitsu. So I like to talk about them because I think they carry over to everything we do in life.
Robert, we discuss this almost every time you're on the show, but I do so because you're someone that not only knows the deep history of jiu-jitsu, but you're someone that always has your finger on the pulse of the art at all times. So I almost treat this kind of like an annual report from you when it comes to like the direction that jiu-jitsu is going. So with that said, last time we talked about this was a year ago. So fast forward now to 2025. Where do you think the art's going? Do you think that this momentum that's being really carried through with professionalization is going to continue? Is that going to change how we recruit new students? How do you see that playing out where we stand now?
I think the tendency is for the commercialization to keep growing. I think it's going to spread worldwide. I was less enthusiastic about it spreading around the world. I'm actually more believing now than ever. I think it's going to keep growing. There's going to be two kinds of jiu-jitsu, and we're watching that already. There's going to be a professional scene that's no-gi and submission only orientated, that's very removed from the reality of combat, and it's not educational in any way, shape, or form. And then there's going to be a more, for mom, dads, and children, it's going to be much less professional organization driven, but more gym and family driven, which is the IBJJF model. They'll reach bigger numbers. But it's the rule sets are fundamentally different at this point. And I noticed that because I recently coached for that PGF, which is a great event. I have fun. I know it sounds like I'm criticizing professional events, but I have fun watching and coaching professional events. Don't get me wrong. I just don't think that they are the measurement of success. I think of success as something completely different. And I think we're detracting from the potential of martial arts and jiu-jitsu if we think of, making money as the metric of success. But I had a lot of fun. But it was interesting because I had to learn how to coach, because it was there was a lot less tactics, and it was a lot of like, just make sure you don't leave your foot out there. It was a lot of just keep your feet, it's more of like a race to who gets to the feet first. And there's a lot less strategy. And it's not just because of this, that means that the better guy wins. I'm like, not necessarily. Like a lot of draws there when one guy was absolutely dominating the other one. So you could find problems in any rule set. Like, and what is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu today? In the appendix, I have discussions about the IBJJF, ADCC, and submission-only formats. Like my opinion of the rules, and the conclusion is there's no perfect rule set. But to the point of your question of where we're going, it's splitting. It's already split. The cultures are different. The demographics are different. The uniforms are different. The rules are different. They want different things. There's less and less compatibility, and I think the tendency is for there to be even less compatibility in the future. And I think that's that. That's just in technical terms. I think, but in terms of growth, I think it's going to continue to grow, and I think that's a good thing. I think growth is a good thing. I just like to think of what is it that we could have kept from bygone eras, and what it is that we lost. And I think there's a lot about the past that we could have done a better job in instilling these things in our students. And I think in this regard, Instagram has been a very negative force because it kind of brought the worst to the surface in some ways. Like it's brought the gossip and the drama and the high school, and these things should be frowned upon. They're not important. You should be able to watch a match. It doesn't have to be hyped. You should be able to appreciate a match for its technical beauty. And the reason people can't do that because they're not educated enough. So really the future of jiu-jitsu, what I would like to see is people train jiu-jitsu, become educated, and appreciate the beauty of the match for what it is. And if Rafa Mendes is staring Cobrinha from across the mats for 2 minutes before they engage, that's because they're brilliant at what they do, and they know that they cannot afford to make a mistake. There's a world of tactics in there that you need to see. And if you can't see it, it's because you don't understand the art well enough. You shouldn't require fireworks and flying arm bars and, dyed hair and just like, there's this goofy stuff that people are doing to draw attention. It's to me is a testament that you either don't understand the art or you don't appreciate it. And that's just a matter of education. You have to educate yourself so we can understand it better, understand the beauty of what we're doing, regardless of fireworks.
A thought that I always find really interesting when it comes to jiu-jitsu is what is currently attracting new students to come in. Like when I first stepped into an academy for the first time way back in like 2005, I was there because I was a big fan of MMA and I was also interested in learning some self-defense skills. Because I'd boxed and done striking arts up to that point, but I wasn't really savvy on the ground at all. So that's kind of what brought me in. Over time, I wonder, has that remained true? And now is this generation coming in because they saw CJI on Instagram, or did they see an ADCC event? They thought, oh, well, that's pretty cool. So are they coming in to be grapplers? Are they coming in? There was also a long period of time where jiu-jitsu kind of went through this transition where it went from being a fighting thing more to like a personal development thing. It was more like kind of yoga, like, oh, come in, everybody's welcome. So it's interesting, the reasons people show up. I'm wondering if that's now changed with the professionalization of the sport.
I think originally, most people show up to martial arts gym because, for self-defense and fitness. I think those are the two big ones, but no one stays for self-defense and fitness. It's just not enough. They stay for community and because they fall in love with the art or the competition world. I strongly disagree that professional events are drawing new eyes to the sport. I think they can have a positive effect. There's a negative side. You gotta be very careful with where we're going with that, but I think the idea that they're responsible for bringing eyes to jiu-jitsu is absurd. And I don't mean to disrespect anyone who disagrees with me. Like, you can be friends and disagree. The reason why jiu-jitsu is popular is because people fall in love with the culture and the art. And that means celebrities like Joe Rogan. And if Joe Rogan is constantly talking about it, he makes it cool because he's a trend maker. So now it's cool and trendy. So all my neighbors are doing it. And people like to put on their Instagram profile blue belt in jiu-jitsu. It gives them a sense of feeling special. Like I did something that you couldn't do. It's a symbol of status at this point to a lot of people, not to everyone. I think there's some hardcore people that truly love jiu-jitsu. In my era, like, you only had those because there was no money, no popularity. You're only there because you absolutely love what you were doing or you're a bit crazy. But now you get to people who are just like, oh, this is trendy. They're there for the likes and the what they can get out of it in terms of, popularity and respect, which is a motivation too. I don't deny that as a motivation, but I'm going to go back to the old school guys who did the heavy lifting, who created the world that made it possible for Royce Gracie to win the UFC in '93 and remind the martial arts world of the importance of ground fighting. I'm going to thank Carlson Gracie and that generation of guys who brought the beach culture of Copacabana into the gym, which is something that didn't exist in martial arts. A big part of the lifestyle that we take for granted. It's Copacabana, man. That's Copacabana. That Carlson brought Copacabana to the mats. Like, you're going to be a tough guy, when it comes to fighting. But as soon as the match is over, I want you to laugh and smile and have a good time and put down that tough guy look. You don't have to be that guy. Just have fun and enjoy life. And that's very, very, south zone of Rio. and I think these are very important things. So again, the celebrities were the other one, like Joe Rogan, Keanu Reeves, and on and on and on. If they're doing it, it's automatically cool. And the other one, and I'm not saying I agree with everything they do, but I think they are the leading force behind the growth of jiu-jitsu around the world, is the IBJJF. I strongly believe that. I know they have their credit, but I think without them, I don't see this being where it's at. Technically, it would be far inferior. Because you got to remember, people don't give credit where it's due. If you look at ADCC champions from 1998 all the way to 2024, or not just champions, anyone who's been on that podium, if you don't believe me, just pull this up. 1998 to 2024, every podium, ADCC, every weight class, male, female. I'd say about 97% of them came through the IBJJF competitive leagues. So when people talking about innovation and pushing the evolution of the sport, and they give themselves credit, I laugh, because you have to be either dishonest or ignorant to say something like that. When you're talking about 97% of competitors coming through the IBJJF league, it's clearly who's actually raising the bar. It's very clear to you. It's not controversial who's raising the bar. Who is actually responsible for making the sport more competitive at a high level. And now it trickles down to the competitive scene, because you see the competitive scene is not common enough to raise the bar in evolutionary terms. The evolution is, you're seeing it, you're watching evolution in the competitive, in the professional scene. But it is as a derivative of the evolution that's been taking place in a competition scene that is now 30 years old. So there's a history that things just don't happen like that. Oh, I saw the move on YouTube, I'm good at it, therefore if I add a detail, I innovated. No, there are building blocks here. It's that meme of the pyramid, or the iceberg, what you see and what's underwater that you don't see. There's all these other things that you're not seeing on your Instagram, but they were fundamental for the peak, the top of the iceberg to exist. So the professional scene is benefited tremendously from the IBJJF competitive league, because that's where the innovation is actually taking place. And if you don't believe me, you can just watch tape on jiu-jitsu to the 90s, early 2000s. You see this evolution and watch where the champions are coming from, unanimously from the IBJJF league.
Yeah.
With we're talking a handful of exceptions here, which are D1 wrestlers, a judoka or two, and that's about it. Everyone else is coming from the IBJJF league. So when my students ask me, Rob, I want to be a champion, what should I do? Do you really? I mean, it's right here. Just do what everyone else has done. It's the same pathway over and over and over. So I don't think they get their due credit for raising the bar for jiu-jitsu and giving it credibility. I'll give you another one. Everyone's losing their mind over that guy, Derek Moneyberger or whatever, he was awarded a black belt after 3.5 years. And I'm not saying that's not impossible. BJ Penn did it. Michele Nicolini did it. I think Cassiamora did it. But those people were winning world titles. Right? Let's say this guy is a phenom. From what I've been told, he's not. Right? It's important to remember that he's not an IBJJF black belt. I think that's a very important point. He's not an IBJJF black belt. And had there not been because there are standards in place, standards that he did not meet. Now, if you remove those standards, let's say the IBJJF didn't exist and there were no standards, what's stopping people from promoting children to black belts? Who's stopping them? So if there's a force that gives people, if there's an organization that gives people the credibility to actually protect jiu-jitsu from these sort of things to happening, now we have a barrier there, right? Look at what happened. The world's lost their mind because they had to wait all this time to get their black belts and put in all this work. And this guy got it without, apparently he doesn't even roll, right? So people are losing their minds over it. Now, had we just removed all those barriers 20 years ago, or had they never existed, I think what would have happened is we would have normalized that sort of behavior, and we would be like, no disrespect to Taekwondo and karate, but 12-year-old black belts, people that get their black belts after 6 months of training. Why not? There's money. There's money to be made. Why not? It's the most important thing, isn't it? You throw everything else in the garbage. As long as you're making money, it's okay. That's where I stand, man. I think these are the forces that have, pushed jiu-jitsu forward. The old school guys, the efficiency of combat inside a ring, which is something we completely forgot. No one cares anymore. It doesn't work. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. That's where we came from. That's why we've succeeded. Hoist Gracie succeeded because he wasn't interested in flashy kicks. He adhered to the reality of combat as the pursuit of, that's what we're doing. This is the pursuit. This is how do we make ourselves more efficient? And that's why this whole thing blew up, because it worked. But no one cares about that anymore. It's like, it doesn't matter. I'm like, okay, well, that's where our credibility comes from. We lost credibility a lot in that regard. We were at one point the most prominent, in terms of efficiency, the most prominent martial art in the world. We've lost that to wrestling. Now, we had a head start in wrestling. We started, this whole thing was, pretty much invented in Brazil in 1933. Now, why is it that, what happened there? Why did wrestling take the lead? Why did jiu-jitsu get left behind? Well, because simple, wrestlers stick to what works. Wrestlers aren't interested in fancy. They're interested in efficiency. They're interested in what? Not in pleasing the crowd. They're interested in actually getting things done efficiently. Simple, it works. Drill, shut up, work harder, meritocracy. There we go. Why do you think these Dagestani guys are taking over the fight world? It's going to keep happening. It's not going to change. They have better values. They have better methods. Everything, because they just cut out the BS. Let's stick to what works, guys. BJJ community is very into BS. They like to talk about moves. I go to these camps. I go to gym. I have to, people sit around in a circle and talk about moves. Just spend like an hour talking about moves. They just love to talk about moves. And I'm like, okay, no one got better.
Like, let's do some moves. Let's rep.
You actually have to sweat, people. You actually have to rep this. You actually have to sweat, which is something boxers understand. You don't see boxers sitting around in a circle talking about the jab.
Right.
You don't see wrestlers sitting around in a circle singing Kumbaya talking about this new variation of the double leg. Right? It's fine. Yeah, innovation is good. You should, but it doesn't mean anything unless you actually sweat. You actually have to be putting in the work, which is something BJJ guys don't do. This is why, not to, I don't want to sound like I'm contradicting myself. Clearly methodology matters. I think we're in our infancy when it comes to methodology. We're like so behind wrestling and boxing because I think those guys got it down with science. So this is why no disrespect to, people think differently. Like ecological jiu-jitsu, people are acting like a revolution. Like you're going to have a hard time convincing me that anyone has created something better than what the Soviets had for wrestling and judo and boxing. You have a very hard time convincing me that we have better methodology than any, not just Soviets, but any boxing coach, that's come through the Olympic tradition or any wrestling high-level wrestling coach in NCAA circuit. Are you going to really convince me that any of us have better methodology than those guys? I don't buy it. I think their methodology is light years ahead of ours because it's simple and it's to the point. There's too much focus on entertainment in jiu-jitsu. Entertain. It's like, okay, guys, but that's not going to make you good at jiu-jitsu, Yeah.
Rob, I think the reason the question of what is attracting people to new students to come train is so important is that we're looking at the growth of jiu-jitsu. Now, obviously, it's incredibly exciting to see the sport growing the way it is and people winning $1 million in a match. I mean, that was inconceivable 10 years ago, even maybe even shorter than that. But I think that, in my opinion, that's all just a symptom of the growth of the art around the world. Because, I mean, let's be real. I don't think that jiu-jitsu is ever going to have fans that are non-jiu-jitsu practitioners. I just don't think so. I think that anyone can watch an MMA fight the same way they watch football, but they don't play football, I think it kind of jiu-jitsu just falls into this category of a very specialized thing where I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of enthusiasts that aren't jiu-jitsu people. So with that said, if we're going to have that continued success, it seems to me that we have to be able to attract new people. And the reason people show up and stay, like you said, because it's not enough to just show up and do a class and train for a year. It's what keeps the person locked in. Those are the things that we really have to, as an art and as a community and as a community, we have to really know what those things are and make sure we don't lose sight of that.
You actually you took the words out of my mouth, which is why we have to monitor community to keep it healthy. Because then people come in. And when people come in and more people train, they understand grappling. And the more they understand grappling, let's say they train between the ages of 7 and 10 or 7 and 20, right? And then 10 years later, there's a grappling match going on TV. Oh, I can watch it and entertain myself and enjoy it. Why? Because I don't need the soap opera. I don't need the fireworks. I don't need the crazy hair. I don't need the goofy stuff. I can just understand the match because of what it represents. I understand the technique. But that requires education. So we're talking about the difference between Pride and the UFC here. When you saw Pride, and someone's going for an armbar, you see the crowd getting excited. Why? Because they understand judo. Like everyone in Japan has either trained judo, or they know someone has trained judo, they know of judo, they've seen judo, they're very familiar with it. And they're more polite people in general. Whereas in the UFC, it's a bar fight. They don't care about technique. Show me the blood, It's very different crowds, but I think that's lack of education. You've seen this change over time. People understand a rear naked choke. So you're seeing people understand it. And then the more they understand it, the more they can appreciate the professional scene minus the fireworks, minus the sensationalism. That makes more people training. And the more people train, the more people understand it, the more likely we are to have a healthy professional scene. I'm not against the professional scene, for the record. I'm against the unhealthy kind, which detracts from moms and dads wanting to bring kids in my gym because they go, I don't want my kid acting like Conor McGregor. And I can't blame them because I wouldn't want my kids acting that way. I don't care how much money he made. Like, I wouldn't want my kids acting that way. Well, you don't want your kids making that kind of money? Not at that cost. No. I wouldn't teach my children that. I wouldn't want my kids in my kids' class behaving that way. Right? So unless we create a healthy culture, like, I think we're going to lose some of the momentum down the road, because at some point parents are going to go, because parents will always love their children. That's a constant in human history. Parents will always want, even if they might be wrong about something here and there, they may not be doing a good job raising their kids, but they love their children. They want what's best. And if they see that this is not a good educational course for their children, they're going to go away. There's a reason why judo's been around forever and judo's not going anywhere, because judo has convinced parents worldwide that it is a good educational model, which it is. Okay, so we need to go a little bit more in that direction so we don't lose what we have and lose all credibility, because we already lost fighting credibility, or a big chunk of it. But we need to make an educational model, at least, so people are coming through the door. And if people are coming through the door, they understand grappling. If we can get 8 billion people training jiu-jitsu, right? And now when we have a professional event, everyone's making plenty of money, and we don't have to we don't need Conor McGregor to sell tickets, because a good fight will sell tickets on its own. I think that's a much better future for jiu-jitsu. And I think that we're kind of on that crossroads. Like, chances are we'll lose that battle, because it's too strong of a force, like it's always been that way. It's hard to change things that are so consistent, but yeah. That's what I would like to see. I think I like jiu-jitsu for what it is. And I think if people understood the beauty of the art, they would appreciate it for what it is.
Oh, that kind of brings us to another interesting point that I'd like to pick your brain on. Like, obviously in old times, martial arts knowledge was handed down from instructor to an apprentice. In modern times, the apprentice is now a customer. How do you feel that that's changed the way the art is passed from person to person?
It's funny. There's a chapter about that in the What is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Today? It's called, Is the Customer Always Right? Because this is the parent that walks up to me and complains about my program. He's never trained before, but he complains about my program because he's a customer. So he looks at me like he's a customer at McDonald's buying a hamburger and going, this is how I want my burger. I'm paying you, so flip my burger the right way. And I'm like, I'm not McDonald's, bro. I'm not Burger King. This is how I cook my food. You can take it or leave it. And there's a conflict there, because as a customer, there's a tendency for customers to shape the culture. So I joke about it in this chapter in my book. What if all the white belts of the world got together and went, we want our blue belts or we're going to quit? Gym owners would feel under pressure to promote people faster, which is kind of what's happening. We're already watching classes that are 45 minutes long. We're watching classes get easier. Blue belts are getting easier. Black belts are getting easier. Why? That's commercial pressure, because you make more money that way. And the corruption starts, it sounds like I'm blaming the white belt. It starts at the top. Like, I go in these circles, man. I don't say anything. Like, I just shut up, but I sit around with some of these guys. Some of these guys have been around longer than me. And all they talk about is money, man. You get a bunch of gym owners and coaches together. It's like at least half a conversation is like them giving each other tips on how to make more money at their gyms. And I'm like, I'm not against that, guys, but is that all you guys have to say? Really? There's nothing else to talk about here. Like, it's become very, very commercial. And I think there's something detrimental to that when it's become like the goal. It sounds hypocritical here. I'm not saying I don't care for customers, but it's just, I think we're overdoing it, man. Like, I don't want to be Taekwondo. No disrespect to Taekwondo. I don't want to be one of those gyms that are just, like, no one knows how to fight. It doesn't have that Spartan culture anymore. Like, I miss that. I like that. That's what drew me to jiu-jitsu. That it was the military life. Like, that's what drew me to jiu-jitsu. Like, this is what's special. It's the difference between being a Boy Scout and a Navy SEAL. Like, being a Boy Scout is not special. Being a Navy SEAL is. You can be proud of yourself. Like, look at what I have to do, man, to be where I'm at. And people respect you because it's hard. But if we lower the standard and we make because the customers putting pressure on us and we submit to that pressure, now we're Boy Scouts. Is the world going to respect a Boy Scout as much as it once respected a Navy SEAL? Of course not. That's the pressure of commercialization, like detracting from the beauty of jiu-jitsu. I think we can't submit to that.
I'm glad we're on this topic, because, Rob, this is something I think about a lot, actually, and that is the double-edged sword of customer retention in jiu-jitsu. Because, look, there can be good. There's a good side to it and a bad side to it, in my opinion. And for the record, I'm not a school owner, but just from what I've seen in the art, I think that customer retention puts a certain amount of pressure on schools to change the way that they've done things traditionally. One way that can be bad, in my opinion, is when you put you put all the safety measures, you put all the rubber padding, and you basically nerf the art, for lack of a better term, to where anyone that would quit after a few months because it's just too rough or it's too difficult or whatever, they really pad things for them so that they don't quit. And that can be good and bad. It could be that some people are just, let's say that someone never did a sport, never grew up with like any sort of discipline or work ethic, but through jujitsu, because the first few months were made a little easier for them, they did toughen up. They did learn how to problem solve better. They did learn how to check their ego better. And because of that, they end up being lifelong jujitsu people. That's cool. At the same time, though, if you nerf everything, it can also, there's some affiliations and some methodologies that are out there where by the time someone's a purple belt, they might as well be a new blue belt because they haven't rolled, they don't train hard, they don't do drill, and so it is a weird double-edged sword that exists that I think it's kind of hard to say whether it's more good or more bad. What do you think?
People always want more in exchange for less. That's human nature.
Yeah.
If you give people the choice, if you give your child a choice between broccoli and chocolate, it's going to choose chocolate. If you give a child a choice between, video games or school, they're going to prefer video games. If you give them a choice between 10 years to get a black belt or 10 months, people will always lean towards easy. Okay, that's human nature. It comes down to leadership that actually cares about the right things to go, we're going to make this hard because we want to maintain its value. If everyone has a black belt, what's the value of a black belt? Right? So I think this falls to leadership, coaches, and go like, we want to preserve this. And that means not, you gotta keep the standards. I think there's this idea that lowering standards are a good idea. And I see this not just beyond jiu-jitsu. Well, we got to make everyone equal, so we're going to lower standards. So this obsession of equality is destroying all hard work. What's so wrong with hierarchy, man? Like, there's no equality in this world. What are you talking about? Find me a tree where one leaf is exactly the same as the leaf right next to it. Find me a leaf that is identical to another leaf. But there's difference. So what? Some people work harder than others. There's hierarchy. Hierarchy is the premise of Darwinian evolution. You can't have change evolution without difference. There has to be conflict, differences. These things are natural. Okay? But people come along is like, no, everyone should be equal. Everyone should be able to get a black belt. He wants one. How can you hurt his feelings? And that's kind of where we're at, man. We've allowed that ethos of weakness and just the sob story to just slowly make its way into jiu-jitsu. And that's what it is. Well, I should be able to be a black belt. Why not? We're equal. Why can't I be a black belt? I'm like, well, you can't do what this guy does. But the other solution is I thought about creating different ranks. Like a rank for practitioner, a rank for competitors, a rank for instructors, which kind of exists, is interesting. This is in the 1967 manual. This is very interesting. Oh, just a little side story here. In 1967, it was still pre-war judo. It's not the 19 stuff, the 4 points for mount, 4 points for back. It's still 1 for 1 for takedown, 1 for mount. But what's interesting in that rule set is the black belt, you have a practitioner black belt, which is just a black with a white bar. And then there's the one with a red belt, which means you're an intern. So now you're a black belt because your coach promoted you, but the federation has not. So you have to be promoted by your coach and the federation, which I like that idea. So you have to pass whatever the standards were. I can't remember what they are exactly. But once you're awarded a black belt from the federation, now you're a professor. You're no longer an intern. And that's when you get the white bars at the end of the red bar, right? The white stripes. Now this gets better. So then there's a red belt for, 9th and 10th degrees. There's a coral belt. You know what the coral belt is for? I love this one. And it goes to show where their thinking was and how, people think I'm criticizing the Gracies. I mean, dude, I'm defending what they were defending. I'm right down. I'm on board with these guys, the way they were thinking. So the coral belt was reserved for those who, quote unquote, were ready to defend the glory and honor of jiu-jitsu inside a ring.
Wow.
It was and it could be taken away from you if you did not perform well.
Interesting. Wow.
They would award someone a coral belt if they were willing to defend and presumably do well when and defend the honor and glory of jiu-jitsu inside a ring. It was a meritocratic belt. It was an honorary belt. And if you were doing well, if you were lost, they could take it away.
You're basically a champion of the art. You're someone that carries the flag.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
That's
I would
incredible.
gladly, if Buchecha had that belt, or Roger, or Marcelo Garcia, or Rafa Mendes, or any of those guys, I'll go like this. Because I think there's a difference. They're not the same. There's a difference in effort and commitment. Who are we kidding here, man? The time these guys put into it. Who are we kidding? It's not the same. Oh, they're black belts. Yeah, but they're black belts and black belts. We know this. I like that idea. I think this is it goes to show some distinction. It goes back to the idea of hierarchy. And I think hierarchies are good things. They exist for a reason. They exist in nature for a reason. Yeah. And I think it teaches the most important thing about this, Ryan, is that it teaches children what the values are. If you want to be the man, you can't talk yourself up on Instagram. That's not the right way to do it. But I got these highlight reels where I'm jumping around and doing funky stuff, and I talk, like this and like that, and people are going to like me. And if I edit the clip into 15 seconds and make it exciting, I get more followers, and then I'm more likely to get on a professional show. Cut that. The values are, what did Buchecha have to do to win 13 world titles?
Yeah.
What would he have to do? What are the values? Accountability, discipline, courage, overcome your hardship, your adversity, keep your head down, work hard, be humble, hierarchies, respect your elders, learn from always, keep a white belt hat on. That's the stuff we got to be teaching. Because when we enforce the right hierarchies, right, the right people in the right places, we're automatically what? Teaching the right values. This is how you climb Mount Everest. There's no helicopter ride. Helicopter ride that's not the same. Oh, it's the same. It's not the same. And I think at some point we got to get together and we got to go, it's not the same. If you take a helicopter ride at the top and if you climb on the strength of your own legs, it's not the same climb. And I don't care what people say. It's not the same. Whereas right now it kind of is. What social media has done, it's made it the same. Well, Rob, I'm in a professional event. Why would I enter the IBJJF leagues? Because it's harder. You should, because it's harder.
You touched on several things there when it comes to what I was saying about customer retention that I really appreciated. One of them was the lowering of standards, which I think is unfortunately happening in a lot of places. Also, quicker promotion for less effort. That's another thing that we see as a drawback. And that kind of brings us to another topic I wanted to talk to you about. There's some people out there that are there's some talk among the jiu-jitsu community that maybe belts don't really mean as much as they used to. That maybe a belt system isn't even really needed anymore. The same way boxing or Muay Thai or wrestling don't have belts for rank.
Yeah.
What would be your counter argument to that? What is the benefit of having the belts?
Well, Jigoro Kano had a white and black belt. That was it, right?
Yeah, there's the two belts. Yeah.
There was this guy Kawaishi, I believe is his name. He was a judoka who taught in England. Probably due to commercial pressures, he realized that if he created colored belts, he'd be able to keep students longer. And the model would work for traditional martial arts, but you're right, it didn't really fly with boxing and wrestling. And it kept boxing and wrestling. It's interesting what happens. It kept it a very meritocratic environment. So it's like, you want to be the man, you got to beat the man. I don't care about what your rank is. But it's also kind of made it a very young male kind of sport. Like if you look at Muay Thai, boxing, and wrestling, what they have in common is that it's an environment dominated by young males. Why? Because they have that physicality. It's like, of course, like I'm 40, I'm turning 44 next week, right? Oh, cool. And I have 3 herniated discs. I have arthritis on both my knees. I have no cartilage left on my knees. My hands hurt when I can't barely do a pull-up because my hands hurt because I have arthritis on my hands and wrists. I'm in pain 24/7, right? I'm not the same guy. I was like, so if I roll with someone, they pass my guard. Like, I just passed the ADCC champions guard. Those old guys suck. I'm like, yeah, it's not the same person. You're not rolling with the same person. I presume that when I'm 50, I'll be worse. I'll be, my body's going to be in worse shape. In boxing, like, would I lose respect if I'm a boxing coach and I can't keep up with a 22-year-old? Because in traditional martial arts, you wear a red belt or a Koro belt or a 5th degree black belt, and people respect it because, it reminds people of how long you've been doing this. We're not equal. I may have more vitality than you, but you have experience that I don't have. In boxing, I'm not sure how, it's interesting to see how that works. I heard from someone once, is like, yeah, you're a boxing coach, you should never spar with your fighters. And I'm like, that's interesting because I don't think they do. I don't think a wrestling coach like goes live. I mean, dude, I don't know. I really don't know. But in jiu-jitsu, I see that, but it's a complicated dynamic because if the 22-year-old purple belt defeats you on the mats, he starts thinking he'll know there's more than you because he's too naive, too young to understand the damage you have done to your body, that it's not the same, that it's not him. It's just, you're not the same guy. So if you remove belts, the benefits is, yes, you make it radically meritocratic, but much of that, what we call merit, is based on vitality, that's based on youth. It's not necessarily experience and knowledge. So it's a problem. You know, there are things about wrestling and boxing that I deeply admire, but I don't know I don't think we can make it a sport for the masses, you know, if we go completely that way. And I like the fact that there's longevity in jiu-jitsu. I don't think jiu-jitsu should be only for young males like it is in boxing and wrestling. You know, of course, I know someone's going to send me a video tomorrow of like some 7-year-old guy wrestling. But like that's the exceptions, guys. Yeah. Like any wrestler will. I know Muay Thai guys that retired at 24, 25, and they're done. You know, I heard that like wrestling is not so different. These guys are out of college and like, screw this. Unless they go MMA, they're like, I'm not doing this unless I'm getting paid millions. You know, it's hard work. It's be difficult for you to be 50 and be active on the mats at a high intensity. Where BJJ is probably the only martial art that allows that. You can be competitive in your 50s. And I mean, against other 50-year-old men, you can still be active because there's a lot less impact in on the ground, right? But it's a difficult one, Ryan. The closest thing to a good answer is what I told you on the previous question, is like, maybe we can create some ranks for black belts and just differentiate.
Yeah.
But I think belts do serve a purpose. We just got to make sure we keep the standards high. So a blue belt is, you know, is a decent blue belt at least. I think I say this all the time, and I'll stand by it. I understand at the highest level, the level now is higher at the highest level, right? The top is 0.1%, sure, conceded. But the average blue belt now is not as good as the average blue belt 20, 30 years ago.
Oh, you don't think so?
Oh, no. The average? No.
Really? So I would have thought it was the other way around, because I've seen blue belts like where I train, and I look at these kids, I'm like, dude, these guys would have kicked my ass when I was a blue belt.
But here's the thing, though. You're not talking about you're talking about the 18-year-old kid in Brazil that lives with his mom, doesn't have a live train twice a day.
Fair enough.
That's not the average. You know, if you look at the average, and I travel the world and I know what the average looks like. And he went to a gym like where I was training in 1998, and the average blue belt was a killer. He wouldn't win a world title today, but he was his work ethic and his values and his overall skill. Like, he trained hard. Like, you know, you get people getting their blue belts and they don't even break a sweat. They're not even sweating. They're on the mat, so they're getting promoted.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I actually completely agree that belts are important. I think that belts really do have a place, and that there's significant meaning to them. I think having distinction, like you said, for people that are coming into a room to understand, okay, how long more or less have these people been training? How much knowledge have they acquired? I think that's an important thing to have. In boxing, for example, it's reputation based. Like you would know of a coach like a Freddie Roach or a Mayweather Senior. You'd know those kinds of people because of what they were competitively in their past before they retired, or you'd know what fighters they've developed, like what champions have they made. And that doesn't mean that there aren't thousands upon thousands of incredible boxing coaches that have tremendous amounts of knowledge and great teaching methodologies that just haven't produced a champion yet. And so, you know, I think in jiu-jitsu, it's nice to have the rank to understand, okay, this guy has this many degrees on his black belt. That means he's been training approximately, 20, 30 years, depending on what his rank is. And that lets you know this person's they've put the time in, they've got the knowledge. And
I agree. With that being said, there's an observation I've made about coaching. I'm assuming it's the same for boxing. A lot of what it's called good coaching is the ability to draw in talent. Mm. And the ability to draw in talent in 2025 is knowing how to play the game of social media and politics and marketing, because those people will draw the talent. You know, it's easy to make a champion out of a champion. If you give me 20 John Jones, I'm pretty sure I can train 20 BJJF and ADCC champions.
That's a good point. Yeah.
It's like, and how do you draw that? A lot of it is luck. Like, I have a couple kids in my gym that are incredibly gifted. That's luck. Now, I'm a good coach. I know I'm a good coach. I know what I'm talking about, and I do a good job coaching them. But I know I'm lucky too, because Those kids are 1 in a million, right? And then if you have 20 of those, because they came to you because you have good presence and you know how to play the game well, now you got 20 killers on the mats. Guess what you do now once you got 20 killers on the mats? Oh, look at great coaches. You got 20 killers on the mats. Well, at that stage, you could set the clock and walk away, bro. You know, good coaches raising someone from the ground up. That's way harder. Turning a champion into a champion is easy. Turning a John Jones into a champion is easy. I'm sorry. That takes no skill as a coach. Now, training someone from the ground up, when you get a kid that doesn't know the difference between right and left, and he's uncoordinated, and he doesn't listen to you, and he's got the attention span of a goldfish, and when you get that kid to, climb an IBJJF podium one day, man, that's way harder.
That's a very good point. That is a very good point. Yeah, there's a lot of times where, if a certain kid, and it's funny, even if they're not as coordinated, just the ability to be coachable, like someone that's willing to show up every day, willing to do what you say, willing to make the corrections that you point out on the day-to-day basis. That alone, I mean, of course, if they're physical freaks as well, then that's going to be a champion regardless, probably. But yeah, like you said, having someone that comes in that's already gifted is half the battle. Real coaching comes in when someone doesn't, when they're not coordinated, when they don't have an athletic background.
And it's funny, the coaches that actually do that don't get the credit.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Yeah. Rob, I know you got to get running soon here. We've talked a lot about the cultural evolution of jiu-jitsu. It's always fascinating talking about this stuff with you. But let's talk a little bit about some technical evolution. Like when you look at guard passing in the old days, for example, a lot of players seem to pass from their knees. Over time, more and more people stand now to pass the guard. What do you think prompted that to happen?
Well, we got rid of the slaps. Remember, in 1970s and 80s, they did once a week. Between Carlson and Hollis, this is the birth of, I don't want to say the birth of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's too big of a term, but the birth of competitive Jiu-Jitsu, at least, or what we practice today. It was born out of the rivalry between Carlson and Hollis Gracie. And they used the same building. They alternated. Hollis taught Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Carlson had the gym Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. The big mats, right? They had a smaller mats, but it was not enough for a class, only for private. But they have a bigger mat. They alternated, right? So these two brothers, they're occupying. They have different students. It's very interesting. And they were the biggest rivals. And they try to kill each other in competition, but they occupied the same building when they're training. They're just alternating days. Once a week, out of those 3 days, once a week, they train with slaps. So a third of their training, third of their jiu-jitsu was done with slaps to the head, right? Because if you pay attention at the rule set and the evolution of the rule set, this is what the triumph of Brazilian jiu-jitsu, 50 years of a martial arts revolution. This is what that book is about. It's about this. And if they had slaps, and the reason they had slaps because they had a concern for the reality of combat. It was important to them that they knew how to fight. And the reason they went ground is because Vale Tudo, the precursor to MMA, was a ground-oriented business. 30-minute rounds, no referee stoppage, no gloves. So this is a very grappling-friendly environment. So when the fight hit the ground, it stayed on the ground. They normally won on the ground. So that's why the rule sets started going around, because they had a concern for the reality of combat. But once you have a point system, they know this is going to drift from the reality of combat. We have to keep it real. Once a week, we're going to train with slaps. So if they're playing guard, I'm slapping you. So it starts to look like MMA. Right? So if I'm passing your guard and I'm standing, I can't hold you down. But if I'm on my knees, I can hold you down and I can hit you, which is exactly what UFC fighters do, right? So if you look at the evolution of ground jiu-jitsu for competitive jiu-jitsu and ground for MMA, the evolutions have become, there's some overlapping. There's still some compatibility. But I dealt with this firsthand when I transitioned from competitive jiu-jitsu to MMA. There's different things, like hitting someone. Hit someone from side control is easy. No, it's not. Try to hit someone in side control. It's very difficult. It takes a lot of skill to hit someone in side control. And it's a skill that I did not develop in competitive BJJ. I had to develop it, in the gym training with people. So what the slaps did was to keep reality of jiu-jitsu grounded in the reality of combat. Right? So you wouldn't do a shin-to-shin guard. You wouldn't play a deep half guard. Now, a lot of people today think that, those people were stupid back then. We're really smart these days because we have iPhones, so we're smarter than them. It's kind of like the same, people say that the aliens built the pyramids of Egypt because those Egyptians must have been so stupid. Only aliens could have done it. It's kind of like the idea that people then were dumb and we're smart. Like they're probably smarter than us. Okay, we just have better technology thanks to science. We've improved a lot. And that's kind of what happens in jiu-jitsu. Those people were not, there's not that they couldn't figure out a 50-50 or a deep half guard, is that they would get hit in the ear if they did it. And when you get hit in the ear once a week, guess what? Your evolution stays where? It stays towards the reality of combat. So that's why it took so long for these things to start developing in Brazil. But at some point, they began to develop because the slaps started to give way to emphasis in competition. Once the competition scene grew and it took a life, body form of its own, now all of a sudden the reality of combat begins to lose momentum, especially because Vale Tudo was very difficult to, they had a hard time getting government approval in the 70s and 80s and early 90s. It was a war to get, like, it was very hard to get. That's why they only had it once every decade. It was such a rare thing to have a Vale Tudo event during that era. It was common in the 50s and 60s, but in the 70s, 80s, it slows down a lot. So naturally, the effort goes where? To the Guanabara Federation tournaments. So now you're no longer the reality of combat begins to lose ground to what? Competitive jiu-jitsu. At some point in the 90s, the slaps stopped completely. I trained once with slaps in 98. I had one experience with training jiu-jitsu with slaps. At the very end of that era, very rarely do you train with slaps because we still had a concern for the reality of combat. Come early 2000s, the IBJJF is growing and you have this professional scene growing, all these tournaments everywhere. People don't care. They care the shin works, deep half guard works. The guy can't hit me in a competition. Who cares? So now you have the separation, right? So the separation has been a side effect of Vale Tudo being illegal in Brazil, the competition scene growing in Brazil. And at some point, these guys realizing that, they didn't have to train realistically if they wanted to win tournaments, and that winning tournaments warranted enough prestige, which tells me that prestige is more important than the reality of combat to humans or to people in general. Like I would rather be, popular and successful, rich, famous, whatever, than I would to adhere to the reality of combat. Because if they cared more about that, they would have never allowed, what happened to happen, which is jiu-jitsu to drift the other way. But these are evolutionary courses that we missed in order for us to become more efficient in competition. I argue that, and I mentioned this in the book, that had the Carlson Gracie's vision of jiu-jitsu continue to evolve, right, in the competitive scene, we would have ended up more or less how those Dagestanis are grappling, which is a jiu-jitsu for MMA. I mean, they call it sambo. They call it sambo, judo, jiu-jitsu. I don't care. To me, it's all the same thing. Like the way I'm looking at things, I'm not getting fixed on labels. But we would have ended up more or less where those guys are, which is a form of grappling that's oriented for a real fight, right? And though they absorbed what they had to from Brazilian jiu-jitsu, which was the back take, they had the wrestling, they had the ethos, like the tough guy mindset. They had that casca grossa kind of mindset. But I think we would have ended up more or less where they are. And it's not better or worse. It's what I personally prefer. I think that because the reason I say, but who cares? Berimbauls are fun. I'm like, I think they're fun too, man. I berimbau. Every now and then I'll hit a berimbau and I'm always like, yes, that looks so cool,
Yeah, highlight reel.
But the problem with berimbauls and lapel guards and all this other stuff that people they're very proud of is that it's not going to last. You know why? Because it's not real. The only things that last are things that work in combat. From ancient Greece to today, there's a common theme. A rear naked choke is not going anywhere because it works. A right hand and a left hook are not going anywhere because they work. A guillotine choke, a single leg takedown, a double leg takedown, these things are eternal. Okay, they're not dependent on fashion, rule sets, federations, professionalization, none of these things. Celebrities like in jiu-jitsu or not, like it's not dependent on that. They're efficient on their own merit, right? They work. They're not going anywhere. 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now, they're still going to be around. Anything that does not work in combat, sooner or later, will disappear. If you don't believe in me, think kata and karate. If you don't believe me, think nunchucks. If you don't believe me, think spinning kicks. And all that stuff that people got goofed out on in the 80s, like, oh, this is so cool. And they're breaking boards and doing all that stuff. And that's all great. If you're having fun with it, hey, man, live your life. But no one could tell me that is, it grew or lasted. It didn't last. It's gone. And anything that doesn't work in a real fight eventually will disappear.
Rob, when it comes to passing guard nowadays, for students listening, the ability to pass guard, obviously from both standing and a low position, is really important. And it's also important to have the ability to switch between the two. That's usually the hallmark of a really good guard passer, someone that can switch between that low head pressure style passing and then quickly standing to their feet and doing speed passing. In your opinion, where should students start? With your experience as a teacher, should they begin learning to pass from their knees first? Should they start standing? What are your thoughts on that?
We're talking competition jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, just
competition jiu-jitsu. I only go standing. Now I have to change for two reasons. People gotten really good at attacking your legs from the bottom, which is something they didn't do when I was competing. Single X here and there, but like a straight footlock from the bottom, those are hard to get. Every now and then a knee bar from the bottom. Now they've gotten really good at attacking from the bottom. So dropping your knees is a natural reaction to that. That's why the body lock came back. It was a reaction to leg lock. The body lock is one of the oldest. One of the first things I learned was the body lock. Like as a white belt, I learned the body lock. But it came back because those guys used to pass on their knees. So now it's gone full circle. We're back to the body lock, but this time for different reasons. It's not because the guy's trying to stand up. It's because leg locks are dangerous. So if I could pass on my feet, I always will. If I feel in danger, I end up dropping to my knees a lot, which makes my passing less efficient in general. I'd rather pass standing. The other thing is because the other reason I drop to my knees a lot these days is because I've got arthritis on both my knees. And staying in that combat stance isn't nearly as fun as it was okay when I was younger. Like now it hurts. Like it's just an uncomfortable position for me a lot of times. So it's easier for me to drop to my knees. I still stay in combat stance, but it's harder for me to stay there. But in general, I recommend passing, agility, followed by improvement in positioning, and then follow that by pressure. So I move to create good positions. And once I get to good positions, it's pressure. There's no separation between agility and pressure. They're both required for passing. Because if you don't move, you can't pass. And if you only move and don't hold, you can't establish. There's two phases to passing the guard. Passing the guard and holding the pass. They're very different things. People jump around, but they don't hold. And the other guy that can hold, but they can't pass because they don't move enough. So always movement followed by pressure.
That's excellent. Guys, listen, if you guys are wanting to improve your guard passing, Rob actually has a really great instructional with us called Constant Pressure to Pass. And it's available right now at bjjfanatics.com. So if you want to see these principles he's talking about, that's one of my favorite ones in my library. So I really encourage you to go check that out. Rob, in closing, I know you got to run, man. What are some of your big goals for the rest of 2025? I know we only got a few months left of the year here, but what are some things you hope to accomplish this year?
I'm trying to do a better job at promoting these books. I'm awful at promotion. I'm like, I don't know what to do. I have an Instagram account. I don't have a huge traction on my side. That's pretty much the extent of what I have. And, people that, word of mouth. But I would like to do a better job promoting them. I just don't know how to do it. And the thing is, it's so much work to promote. I'd rather just sit down and write another one, which is kind of what I like to do anyway. So I got a draft for a new one. I don't think it'll be done probably another 6 months to a year before I'm, just to get a draft done, probably another 6 months. I'm more like maybe this time next year, I'll have another one out, hopefully. I teach regularly. I love to teach. I'm one of the few people in this world who actually likes airports. I don't mind airports. I don't mind flying. I hate getting jet lag, getting tired, but I like to fly. I on a plane. I actually enjoy it. So I'm pretty active teaching seminars. I'm available for seminars. And I manage to teach every day, and that's what I plan on doing. I think eventually I'll teach less. I'm currently teaching 2-3 classes a day. I'll probably bring it down to 1 class at some point a day. But I plan on teaching till the day I die. If I die on the mats, I'll think it's a good way of going. That's how I would like to go. I wouldn't want to be in a hospital. I want to be on the mats, just drop and go. That'd be the perfect way to go.
Amen to that. Yeah, I agree completely. That's probably where I'd want to be. I want to make sure my family's with me, but yeah, if I have my family training with me and I go, that's probably where I'd want to go to. So
can I say something really quick?
Yeah, please do.
If I offended anyone, I'm sorry. I sometimes, people take disagreements and they take it to it's because I don't think that way. People can disagree with my best friends disagree with everything I say, and they're still my best friends. Like I don't mind disagreements. Like you can still be friends. Don't take it personally, please. It's not my intention or, to upset anyone when I speak my mind. It's just, it's how I like people that speak their mind with me and are So that's how I try to be with people, right? So, but I do apologize if I offended anyone. It was not my intention.
Nah, Rob, anytime you're here talking about this stuff, man, it really is appreciated greatly. And I think all the feedback we get in the comments and everything, it reflects that as well. So never feel self-conscious about sharing your thoughts, at least not on this show. So I do appreciate your time and all the great insight you always bring to the table.
Thank you, Ryan. It's a pleasure, man.
Of course, brother. For anyone out there that wants to keep up with Rob, it's real easy to do so. He's active on Facebook. You can find him there. His Twitter, or X, or whatever they're calling it these days, is Robert Drysdale. Instagram is Robert Drysdale JJ. You guys follow him there. Also, his YouTube channel, if you type in Robert Drysdale, you'll find his channel. Just hit subscribe and hit the little bell icon to get notified when he adds new content. His website is drysdaljujitsu.com. Guys, if you're ever traveling through Las Vegas, he's got one of the best academies in the world. So drop in and train with him if you're there. If you can't make it to Las Vegas, you can learn from him anywhere in the world here at BJJFanatics.com. We discussed earlier his constant pressure to pass instructional, which is one of 2 that he has with us. So head over to BJJFanatics.com, type in his name, and check that out. He's also got 2 new books out. He's got several books that he's written, but the 2 most recent ones are the ones we discussed today, which is The Triumph of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and What is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Today. Check out the description wherever you're listening to the show, whether it's on YouTube or on all podcast platforms. Check the description. I'll add the link there. And then, guys, also, he's always available for seminars. So if you want to have Rob come out to your academy, wherever you are in the world, as he said, he's not afraid of airports. He likes to fly. So hit him up and get him out to your school. It'd be an unforgettable seminar if you have him come out. And that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. I really appreciate you tuning in. Please stay tuned for the next episode of the BJJ Fanatics podcast.